You know it's getting bad out there when you start hearing more and more stories of people breaking up because the economy is so bad. You know, one unfortunate side effect we saw during the GFC is we saw a lot of divorces, we saw a lot of families split up due to all the financial hardships, and now it's starting to happen again. And you know, it sucks. It sucks that this is the case, especially if you're in a happy relationship or if you love your family, but you know, the tension is just too high and problems start creeping in because of financial issues. Well, that's exactly what happened to this couple from Seattle. I wanted to talk about their story here because it directly relates to everything we talk about here on the channel about how a crappy job market and how a lack of opportunity can cause people to just split up. So this person says that her boyfriend had a job last year that he quit, and after quitting that job, he ended up working 5 different jobs just to be able to make ends meet. So that's already pathetic, first of all, that you have to work 5 jobs in order to replace one. And those are the kind of jobs that are being created right now in this so-called fantastic economy. Don't forget that. So they were living together in Seattle, and the boyfriend decided he was going to move back to Las Vegas to be with his family. And rather than try to do the long distance thing, they just decided, you know what, it's better if we just split up. And you know, flying back and forth isn't going to be cost effective, especially when we're struggling financially. So that was a smart thing to do, but it's sad for both of them because it felt like that this relationship had to end because of something that was outside of their control, because they couldn't really afford to hack it together in the same city. Then this guy had no choice but to go back and live with his parents essentially and not have to worry about the bills for a little while. And they say they think they would still be together if it wasn't for this. Now obviously if they really love each other, then maybe they'll find a way to get back together despite the unfortunate bad economic circumstances. And then because the economy is so bad and because things are so unaffordable, you have couples that are on the complete opposite of the spectrum that are moving in together right away because of how unaffordable life is, you know, and I think that's actually kind of a smart thing to do as long as you get somewhat of a feel of the person you're moving in with, because obviously if you don't have personalities that are going to mesh well together once you're living together, that can create some pretty big problems. It turns out there was a survey also done by Gen Z and millennials, and they found out that 76% of young people in this age group would be significantly more persuaded to move in together in a relationship because of financials, because of how much easier it would be if we could just split the bills. And listen, I think this is a smart thing to do. My only advice would be on this, like if you are somebody who's considering doing this, treat it like a roommate situation in the sense that if something were to go wrong and you split up, then you can still afford to pay for the place on your own. You know, but that also kind of defeats the point of moving in together because a lot of people probably wouldn't be able to afford the place on their own, which is why they're doing this in the first place. So from that perspective, it's kind of a risky move. And if you can't pay the rent, you may end up with an eviction on your record, or the landlord may sue you for back rent. There's things like that that could happen as a negative consequence of not being able to complete the lease agreement. Oh yeah, and by the way, as you can see, I'm wearing a sweater today because it's kind of chilly here. Now, interestingly enough, when they go back in time and look at what were rent prices when baby boomers were coming of age and getting into relationships and moving in together, how much did they have to pay? Was this a similar struggle for them, essentially? And it turns out the answer is no. And the reason is because back in 1980, the median rent was only $243 a month. Today it's $1,653 a month, according to Redfin. And then when you account for inflation, $243 a month in 1980 only equates to $923 today. So when you hear baby boomers say that, oh, you're just lazy or you just need to try harder or whatever, that's not actually true because the numbers just don't translate, guys. $923 a month in rent would probably be a blessing for a lot of people right now versus almost $1,700 a month in rent. And obviously this video is not meant to be any sort of relationship advice or marriage counseling or anything like that. But most of us already know that clear communication is the key to any sort of successful relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship, whatever. And if you're struggling financially, it's important to talk about it with your partner before things boil over to a point of no return. And that's what happens to people. Sometimes people try to hide the fact that, they lost a job, or things aren't going as well at work as they were hoping, or they didn't get that promotion. People lie about stuff like this in order to not look bad in front of their partner. Now, there's so many layoffs happening in so many different industries right now. In fact, I have several different accounts here of layoffs you really wouldn't expect. We've heard of a lot of layoffs in the tech sector, especially. We've also heard of a lot of stores, retail stores and restaurants closing down. So there's a lot of layoffs in those fields. But here's one that you probably wouldn't think is going on, that is. And there are lots of layoffs happening right now in the video game industry. A lot of you might remember, if you're old enough, that there was all these ads, maybe 20 years ago out there telling people like, oh, you love playing video games, you can go to school for this and you can learn how to become a video game developer and you can, make a living off of this. And a lot of people did it and had a successful career with it for many years, up until recently. They talked to one guy who did exactly that. He's been working a successful video game career for the last 2 decades. He even landed his dream job in the industry. But last fall, he was let go along with 800 others from Epic Games. They are the creator of the Fortnite series. 3 months later, he was able to get a job at a new game studio, but then just a couple months after that, he was laid off again. So having it happen twice in just 1 year was pretty demotivating. And this guy's 47 years old, so it's not like he's unemployable or anything, but he's getting into the age group where a lot of jobs don't want to hire you anymore. And the crazy thing is, working in the industry has been very reliable up until recently, because a lot more game studios are starting to lay off more and more of their workers right now.
Here we have a house that actually just sold just a couple days ago for $2.625 million. Even the Zillow's estimate is at $2.523 million. And this house sold over asking price because they listed it for sale for barely 2.5, right? And then somebody pays a little over $100,000 more than asking price. This is all happening simultaneously while in this same area I've showed you houses that are selling for less today than what they purchased it for 2 years ago, yet there's still people out there dumb enough to overpay for a property. On top of that, current property tax bills, $25,000 a year. New owners going to be paying somewhere in the neighborhood about $32,000, $33,000 a year. So some people just never learn.
And it puts people like this on shaky ground, because it's like, okay, I've been doing this for the past 20, 25 years, and I've had 2 layoffs in just 1 year. Is it worth it to keep pursuing jobs in the industry, or should I be looking at trying to get into a new line of work at almost 50 years old? In fact, video game companies have laid off almost 12,000 people so far just this year in 2024 alone. That's one that you don't hear about so much, but that's a lot of people losing a job, guys. Last year in 2023, it was 10,500, and in 2022, it was 8,500. So clearly you can see that the layoffs in the video game industry have skyrocketed over the past couple of years. And people in the industry are now saying that they don't remember layoffs being this bad in the 24 years that they've been working there. Video game industry even made it through better the GFC than right now. That's how much things are changing right now, and people have to be aware that there are some major shifts happening, not just in our economy, but with the way people work, with the type of jobs that are going to be available in the future, and that's going to shift things. Microsoft, they just laid off about 10,000 employees as well in their gaming division. And they talked to another guy who was in this round of layoffs who's 54 years old, and he said the last time he was fired from a job was in 2003. And guess what? It took him almost 18 months to get into his current new job, which isn't even really a job. It's a 3-month-long freelancing position for a mobile gaming startup. So it's not really a job. It's kind of just like a gig in the meantime. That's no replacement for a 25-year career. And somebody like this who has a family is put into a vulnerable position, because he said he's already blown through his entire severance package. It didn't say how much it was, but I'm sure it was a decent amount, but it's gone now. And now he's dipping into his 401k. In the meantime, he's applied for hundreds of jobs and no prospects. I gotta admit, I do my part. I buy video games, I play video games. I can't play as much as I could when I was a teenager or a little kid, because I'm an adult now and have things to do. But it's just crazy to me because it's one of those things that you would just never expect, an industry that seems like it would probably do good no matter what. It's a fairly cheap form of entertainment. I mean, even if you buy a game brand new these days, it's like $70, which isn't cheap, but it's a whole lot cheaper than, you know, going out clubbing or going to the bar a few nights a week or having an expensive hobby. Here's another one with a big round of layoffs, which they're not even technically counted as layoffs because people are getting severance packages. Maybe they're counting them, maybe they're not, guys. But Verizon, they're going to be giving over 5,000 employees buyouts to leave the company right now. In fact, there's so many people leaving with severance packages that Verizon estimates it's going to cost them about $1.9 billion. And once again, why is this happening? It's happening in an effort to reduce expenses, guys, to increase the company's bottom line and have less people to pay. So you have all these companies doing this right now, and more people that need to find a job at a time when there's less of them available. Doesn't really sound like a good combination looking into the future. My question is, are all these people at Verizon going to be counted as unemployed, even though they're getting generous severance packages? I mean, technically they're still without a job. You would think that they would be. But with the way the unemployment numbers are calculated and how inaccurate the data has been proven to be over the past several years, we don't even know. The trucking industry has been hurting for quite some time. I've done several videos on this over the past year or so. Well, Howard sent me a story of another trucking company that's just closing up shop and letting everyone go, guys. MTI is an Illinois-based trucking company. They're contracted with the post office to deliver our mail across the country. So they have almost 500 drivers. All they did was just called everybody up on the phone and say, yep, you're done. You don't have to work here anymore, and you're finished. And there was another story similar to this just a few weeks back. I can't remember the name of the company, where they also just closed down real fast like that overnight and told everybody who's working there that you're finished. And so going back to my story at the beginning here, these are how financial problems are created within families unexpectedly a lot of times. Here's something interesting I haven't really given much thought, but I read about today that makes you wonder how well the economy is going to do moving forward, even when the Fed starts cutting rates. When you look at what real interest rates are, which can be calculated when you calculate the difference between effective Fed funds rate and expected inflation rates, real rates actually reflect the true cost of borrowing after taking inflation into account. The problem is inflation numbers can't be trusted, so nobody really knows what the real rate of inflation is. Therefore, you can't really calculate real rates. But let's just go with this exercise as an example to see the point that they're trying to make here. So get this. The difference between the expected inflation rate over the next 5 years of 1.86% sounds extremely low, much lower than it is right now, and the effective Fed funds rate of 5.33% as of Wednesday this past week. That puts real interest rates at 3.47%, which they say is the highest since 2003. And they say this is a problem because higher real interest rates weaken the economy and can exacerbate inequality. People who have a lot of savings benefit from higher returns, but those who rely on borrowing or have lower incomes struggle with increased costs. And so it's common knowledge that when real interest rates go up, then it kind of slows down the economy that's being affected by it. But the reason why this equation is flawed, if you ask me, is because they're looking at a 5-year inflation rate of only 1.86%. Who are they kidding, guys? Right now, the official number is at 2.5% for the CPI. And if it's usually about half of what they really say it is, it's at 5%. So really, when you look at it, real interest rates to me, if you take the 5.33 minus 5, then we're at basically zero. We're at 0% real interest rates right now. And that's why you haven't seen anything when it comes to an economic slowdown, because they haven't really done anything to allow that to happen on a large scale, if you ask me. And this also proves what I've been saying over the past year, that the interest rate hikes that the Fed created have not been enough to really turn this economy upside down. Like, yeah, things aren't going well right now, but it should be a whole lot worse if we had interest rates high enough to actually do the job of crushing inflation. And that's why we're all waiting around to see if the Fed hits the panic button and starts cutting by 50 basis points at their next meeting or not, because they know that things are already kind of deteriorating pretty quickly right now, and they also know that inflation hasn't really gotten under control but they're at a point where they have no choice. If they want to save the economy, they're gonna have to cut rates, and we're gonna go through this whole cycle again of rates being cut and people losing jobs, stock market going down, home prices going down, people being forced to sell assets, all sorts of things like that, until it eventually normalizes and they do it to us all over again. This is why a lot of people are tired of the Federal Reserve and want to see it abolished, because, you know, the games that they play with our economy, you know, swing things in such drastic directions that it literally splits up families, guys. It causes people to lose homes. It causes people to lose jobs. It causes people to lose their future retirement savings. It has, you know, massive impacts on people's futures, usually for the negative, unless you're somebody who can benefit from these ridiculous changes. You know, I learned about all this stuff a long time ago, before I even ever started the YouTube channel, and I realized, rather than try to fight against it, let's figure out how can I play this system? How can I benefit from this? So I am somebody who does benefit from the interest rates being higher like this, and I wish they were higher. And that's what I really want to see people do from watching my channel. You know, I've seen a lot of positive comments lately, people saying, you know, I paid off my credit card because of you, or I bought the right house because of you, or I sold my house at the right time because of you. And those are all things I really want to hear from people who watch, guys. And every single time I'm able to have one of those impacts on someone, it really means a lot to me, and just makes me feel good knowing that whatever I'm doing here is helping a lot of people out there. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.